Welcome to the Boss It Weekly podcast, a no-nonsense, no-hype, frank and close-up analysis of what is currently working and what is not in the world of software. The Boss It podcast is packed with major takeaways for software business owners and managers. So, let's begin.
So, just a quick message from me before we go into the podcast for today. I recorded this podcast a few days ago, and unfortunately, at the time, I had a little bit of a cold, and you will hear from the podcast that I'm sounding very nasal. It sounds a little bit like an advert for a decongestant. But if you can get over that, I think you will find this podcast very interesting. It actually is the longest podcast that we've ever done. Normally we're sort of around 30 to maximum 40 minutes, but this one went on for an hour, and I think you can see why. So apologies for the rather strange sounding voice. I'm now over it. Hopefully you can hear that, and enjoy. Thank you very much. Hello, this is Mark Edwards, and this is Boss It Season 2. We've already recorded a few of the podcasts. Today, you will definitely find it of interest. We're going to be talking to Jon Street. Jon Street I've known for a few years. He was introduced to me. Well, his name was mentioned to me, actually, by a friend of mine who said he had started working with him, really impressed with what he does. And I'll let him explain to you what that is. I went onto his website, had a look at his website, really impressed with that, and I just reached out to him, and we took things from there. And actually, to give you a bit of a recommendation, my son, who has been training as a copywriter for a number of years, he had done a number of copywriting courses, one of which was, in fact, John will probably remember the name of it. It's one of the big ones in America, which is sort of one of the premier training courses. He had completed that and he'd done the advanced course, and I actually recommended that he go and have a look at John, and he's in the process of going through one of John's courses, and this is around the use of newsletters and how you need to put those together, and he's been very, very impressed. So if I'm pointing my own son towards John, I must have some faith in the man. Anyway, that's enough of an introduction. John, are you there?
I am here. Thank you very much, Mark. Yeah, Luke is going to go far.
Excellent. That's what a dad always wants to hear, isn't it? Yeah, he's very enthusiastic, and he like me really liked your website, and I think that the first word I would like to use about it is authentic. It really came across as you were putting a bit of yourself out there. And I know that's something that perhaps we can talk about a bit later on. But before we get on to that, it would be useful if, first of all, perhaps you explain to people what it is you do, and then let's see how you got to where you are now.
So primarily, I mean, there's a few different things that I do, but primarily I work with experts, people who have got, consultants, coaches. The digital course market is booming, people in that area primarily. But because of the skill set I've got, I've grown offline gyms, I've grown software companies, I've grown martial arts companies, but this is all for other people, because primarily I'm about messaging and positioning and offer structure. I'm about the buying decision, and what does the prospect have to hear in order for whether it's a client or a customer, for them to become a client or customer. What do they have to hear for it to be a no-brainer? I'm fascinated with psychology. I can tell you about how the psychology and the business stuff developed. But yeah, it's primarily around messaging, offer structure, and positioning, and the stuff that's involved with that.
Well, I'm a great fan in all of those areas. When we're working with our clients, that's one of the things that we're always looking at their business, because typically software companies aren't particularly great at it. Some are, and you can see the results of it, but how you communicate with your market is so key. How did you start out in this? So what did you start doing? I can't imagine that you left school thinking you're going to be a consultant in the area of messaging, positioning and buying proposition. You wouldn't even have known what that meant in those days, I wouldn't have thought.
No, I was never academic at school. I think my parents kind of assumed he's either going to end up in prison or he'll end up working in McDonald's or Wetherspoons. Both of my sisters are geniuses. Like, one went to Oxford, The other one, went to Nottingham and then Southampton at the higher level, studying psychology. And I was kind of the black sheep of the family who they didn't really know what was going to end up happening.
Yeah.
But the way the business stuff came about, I left school. I scraped through my GCSEs, C's and D's and stuff like that. And,
Yes.
went to A levels, failed pretty much all of them. But the big thing that happened was at college, stuff from childhood. It wasn't any major trauma, compared to what some people go through. But
Yes.
stuff from childhood started to surface, and I became really, really socially anxious. I'm quite an outgoing character, but out of nowhere, this thing hit me. I went to uni, scraped through the A levels, ended up going to uni, but had to leave after the first year. And I was working in my dad's shop. My dad ran a cushion manufacturing company in Leytonstone. And I was working there and I was cutting pieces of threads off of cushions thinking, okay, this can't be where my life goes. This is, I can't imagine doing this for the rest of my life. And my dad was a subscriber to, have you ever heard of Nightingale and Conan?
Absolutely, yeah. I used to listen to their tapes many, many years ago when I spent a lot of time in the car, and I would have those tapes playing almost constantly whenever I was driving.
Exactly. Well, my dad was exactly the same. He was very much a Nightingale and Conan junkie, and he'd get after a few runs, Dad would bang on about this guy called Jay Abraham to me. Now, he'd been doing that since I was about 12.
Yeah.
But I started to pay more attention to Dad when I was cutting the threads off of the cushions thinking, okay, this can't be my life. And I was listening to him and he was speaking about Jay, and he told me to start, listening to different audio tapes back then. That many people listening to this will be old enough. Some of them might not be. Now it's all MP3s.
Yeah.
But I was putting, the audio tapes and listening to Jay Abraham, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, all of these legends in selling and business. And Jay Abraham mentioned copywriting. And because I've always quite enjoyed writing, I decided to look into that. And it kind of just went from there, to be honest. I asked Dad, Dad bought me a T-shirt printing company, but I was so socially anxious, I couldn't deal with customers, which, when it comes to business, that's not the best, the best strategy.
And
So
how many years ago was this? Because I think that very positively, the attitude towards people having issues with mental health has changed a lot just in recent years, and I think people are much more aware. And I think that the attitude towards it is much more positive. But in the past, I think there was a bit of a stigma. When how did that affect you in those days? Because it really can be debilitating, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, I this was 2004 was when 2002 I think I left uni, something like that.
Yes.
2004 it got so bad that I was struggling to leave the house, and the only time I would leave the house was to go to the pub, but I would have 4 beers just to get to the pub.
Wow.
So yeah, exactly. So everyone thought I was, God, John's really confident. No, John's shit-faced.
Yes.
That's what was going on. And then, so 2005, especially as a young guy, I was like 20, 21, something like that. Knowing that, feeling like you're always, like people are judging you, people are waiting for you to make a mistake. I didn't want to tell it, like my parents knew about it, but literally no one else knew. And they were always supportive. My parents are my best friends. They're amazing. But it really was, for me, just this huge shame that I'm not good enough, this constant feeling I'm not good enough.
So you had this social anxiety, but you were able to function, and most people weren't aware. Was that right?
Well, I was able to function by locking myself away in my bedroom.
Yes, sure.
So it was very much an avoidance strategy of never, I was a master of avoiding anything that I could.
Yeah.
And then when my sister's wedding came up in 2005, I was literally lying there in bed for months beforehand, dreading it, thinking about going red in front of everyone, because that for me was one of the things I really feared. So it was really, really, when I look back, it was at a high level. But then that kind of became the catalyst. So, I'm a big believer in things happen for a reason. And that became a catalyst for me going the copywriting and online business route, because it meant I never had to deal with customers.
What made that change? Because I can remember meeting you for the first time, and I would never have guessed that you had that social anxiety. And I'm pretty good with people. You can sense how nervous or relaxed people are. And I would say that you would definitely be on the scale of the people that were relaxed, but I would say comfortable in their own skin. That's how you came across when I met you. And it wasn't that many years ago.
No.
How did that change come about?
Well, the big one is because I was, we'll speak in a minute about, I became fascinated with psychology because of all of this. And I was reading book after book after book, looking for the one thing that was going to give me this, the clouds would part and then I'd have this epiphany and I wouldn't be socially anxious anymore.
Yeah.
But the thing that really changed it was letting go of my attachment to control. Anxiety is very much a control that, you want to control the outcome of everything. And in the social anxiety context, it's you want to control other people's opinions of you.
Yes.
One of the big light bulb moments I had was you just can't control people's opinions of you because people's values are different.
Yeah.
So some people value confidence and being outgoing. Some people actually find that intimidating. So they might not be as keen on you. Some people value, for example, veganism. Other people are meat eaters, so they might not be as keen on you for that reason. So, one thing was understanding that you can't please everyone regardless, and understanding that you can't, if you're trying to control stuff, and this, in regards to dealing with entrepreneurs, a lot of entrepreneurs are concerned, they get anxious about paying the bills and staff and all this stuff up ahead, and it can overwhelm them and really kind of cripple them in the present.
Yes.
Learning to let go of control has been a huge aspect of overcoming stuff, but also facing up to things. The brain adapts. The brain is very, very good at adapting to whatever you find is intimidating. So I've just done 2 weeks ago, I just did a seminar in front of 48 people.
Yes.
And genuinely, I would rather have died in 2005 than do that. It's my favorite thing in the world to do now. I love it because the brain adapts, the brain learns to, create different associations. It's malleable. We're never stuck the way we are. And I think that's a big message for people who are struggling with mental health.
Yes, I think that perhaps was that something that was within you, that you had that optimism that you can change. Because I come across people that they sort of have this attitude that, well, that's how I am, that's how I've been born, and I won't be able to change that. I'm that type of person. Were you like that, or did you always in the back of your mind know that you could change?
A mixture of both, to be honest. Because Dad, as I said, listened to Nightingale and Conan.
Yes.
He was so positive. He's always drummed into me, you can do anything, John boy, he'd say to me after a few rums. The Captain Morgan is brilliant for that kind of thing.
Yes.
he would tell, he drummed that into me. So that was at the back of my head. At the time when I was in it, there was part of me that thought I can overcome this. And there was the other side of me, which was a fear that was, maybe I was born this way. Maybe this is just who I am. And that the stuff up until this point that hit me, maybe I was kind of fluking it. And now this is my reality, which is utter bullshit. That's not, the brain changes, emotions change, associations that cause the anxiety and stress changes. So facing up to stuff rather than avoiding it is like burying it is not a good strategy. So I started to do little things like going and getting my haircut at the barber's was an ordeal.
Yes.
I'd be sat there shaking, sweating, thinking he could see me go red. But then slowly but surely, I could sit in that barber's chair fine. My first ever seminar I did, quote unquote seminar, was to 2 people, right? Now, I'd have no problem speaking. Like if you've seen footage from the seminars, I'm pretty extreme. I say all kinds of stuff. I'm just so me because I no longer, here's a great, a great line for those who are struggling with social anxiety or a lot of stuff. And status anxiety is something that entrepreneurs struggle with. My sense of self is not external to me.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I'm not going out trying to get other people's approval for me to be, to be loved and worthy.
You're not looking to get justification of who you are in the mirror of other people's eyes.
Exactly. Or at least it's not even in the mirror of other people's eyes. It's what we think they're thinking about us.
Yes, that's true. Yes. And a lot of the time they're not thinking anything about you at all. It's often the case, isn't it? Yeah.
So that stuff was the catalyst for me to look into online business related stuff, and primarily I failed a lot in 2005 until I was listening to Jay Abraham, and there's a few things he said, but one of them was the importance of your messaging and how copywriting was the first skill that he learned, and that set the light bulbs off.
So that set you on that route. Jay Abrahams is one of those people within marketing, and I think we see a lot on the internet, a lot now, references to people who are being referred to as gurus, and it's almost become a bit of a negative word, but I think Jay Abrahams, he's been around a long time. He's one of those people where I think you could legitimately put that label on him and it would be a positive one.
Totally. He's what I love about Jay is he's strategic. Like I've got my big belief, because I've been around since 2005 online, so I'm a dinosaur in those terms. Yep. I've seen so many changes. I'm a big believer in terms of your business strategy, psychology versus technology on the marketing side of things, because a lot of people get, they're thinking about Facebook ads as the solution or LinkedIn marketing or stuff like that. If that could change tomorrow, I've seen too many Facebook algorithms change, Google algorithms, YouTube algorithms. So not only do I think that technology, trying to go all in on a technology side of marketing isn't the best route, but also the message behind what you're putting into a Facebook ad is what's more important than the algorithm on Facebook.
Yes. Those things that are outside of your control and, as you say, could change overnight, and that could have a devastating effect upon you. But if you just see them as different channels, that messaging, your buying proposition is something that you do have control over.
Exactly. And this is the reason why I love the psychology side of things so much is it's not going to change.
Yes.
You're investing your time and energy and money and resources into something that okay, in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 20, 30 years' time, all the way until, we eventually become AI, and then I don't know what's going to happen in terms of the copyright stuff. But if we just understand that people buy in predictable ways, and so whether that's a company, which is just a group of individuals, or an individual, people buy in predictable ways. If you know how to trigger that buying decision, you've got a skill set that will last a lifetime. So when I was listening to Jay Abraham and he spoke about copywriting and these different strategies, it was so different to the stuff I had been learning before that, which was how to get your search engine to the top of Google. It was more of the tactical stuff, which most of it didn't work anyway. It was more of the tactical stuff rather than the strategic stuff.
Yes, absolutely. I come across a lot of business owners when I speak to them about marketing. They will then talk to me almost exclusively about SEO,
right,
Google, and paid ads, not about that communication and what they're actually saying and how they position themselves, and anything about their messaging, their copywriting. And it is very poorly done in the software industry. But I think part of that is actually that the software industry, when you look at all different types of industry, is relatively new. It's not been around for that long. There are companies out there that have been around for 100 years. It just isn't.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think the longest standing client that we've had, actually a client at the moment, is 30 years. And we were all quite amazed that they'd been around for 30 years. But overall, as regards an industry and it developing, that's a not long time. And also because they typically they come from a technical background, again, I don't think that that means that they're going to necessarily gravitate towards some of the things that you're talking about. They're going to love to get their head down into the technical aspects. They get excited by technology, not necessarily what you've been talking about. And I think that's why we are seeing a particular weakness, and I think that's an opportunity as well, because if the industry, if that is a weakness, then you've got the opportunity to stand out.
Bingo, and that's exactly right. And I totally, it's not even just the technology industry. What I've found is people get so close to the product or service they're selling, they can't see the wood for the trees.
Yes.
So it's very easy for someone outside who's got the skill set to look at what they're doing and go, okay, well, why don't you position it this way? Or why don't we communicate it this way? And just, brainstorm with them. And you see the eyes widen, because they think, how have we not thought of that? So it's not even, when you get so close to a product, and you're, in the consulting role that you take, Mark, you'll know this as well. It's easier for an outsider to look in and see the big picture than it is for someone inside the company.
Yes, and it's harder to do it on your own business, because I have conversations with clients and where we can see opportunities within their business, and I always see it in that way, where some changes that don't necessarily cost a lot can have a massive effect. And I think they are concepts and principles, and I have to hold those in my head and turn around and face my own business to say, but are we doing that in our business? Sometimes you see, but we're not doing it, but it's so much more difficult to recognize it in your own business because you get too close to it. I asked you a question here because this is something that comes up quite a lot. I think particularly in this industry, but you probably hear it, which is that the art of communicating is different in a B2C business than it is B2B, because in B2B they want the facts, they want logic, and they're going to make a decision, and it's being done for the business. Now, we don't believe that. We believe people are people, and you're communicating with people, and a lot of the reason why people buy is emotional, and then they like to back it up with logic. What would you say regarding that B2C, B2B difference as it's sometimes perceived?
It's that one is a real frustration for copywriters and people who really know the buying. So we all there's 100% there's logic involved, and I think focus more on the logic than a lot of people do, because there's almost different levels of copywriter and messaging experts. There are some people who think it's all just the words and the structure behind the words. So they'll kind of say, oh, well, you need to have a headline, and then you need to have what's called a lead opening. And so they'll be looking at it more from the word aspect and how to communicate the message.
Yes.
What I look at it from is the positioning of the company, and then the words flood from the positioning. Because if you just give someone facts and the logical side of things, that's fine. But you need to make sure that the prospect sees you as the obvious choice over all of your competition. And what a lot of people do in when they're just giving the facts and logic, is it's facts and logic about their product or service, but not, why you should pick me or us over all the other options you've got.
And people always have other options.
Totally. No offer exists in a vacuum. If it does, you might have gone into a dead market. And it's not only that. You're not just in this day and age where attention is low, trust is low, but competition's sky high. You're not only competing against people in your market, you're competing against the other options that whoever you're selling to has to sell in other markets as well. We all have a limited budget. So this is why positioning is so crucial. It's why concepts like lifetime value and different things that I focus on are so crucial, because if my overarching philosophy, both in life and business, is efficiency. If you're pouring water into a bucket with holes in, you're not being efficient. And what I see in a lot of people's messaging and the way they're set up is it's a leaky bucket. They're putting all this effort into lead generation, and they're getting on the phone, or they're getting visitors to their website, or they're doing a presentation, and the presentation it's focused on their product and service, and it's very much speaking about themselves.
Yes.
Versus, here is why we're the best option, and a logical and emotional argument behind it.
Yes.
So yeah, I totally agree that emotion and logic's involved. I would say that in the B2B space, logic is a lot higher than in the B2C space, if that makes sense.
Yes. But there's still an emotional aspect to it.
100%, because you've got to get people excited about buying a product. Why would someone buy a product or service if it doesn't excite them in any way? And they should be excited because you're communicating that you can solve a problem.
Yeah.
So that's another mistake a lot of people make, is they don't speak to the problem enough. They're focused on speaking about themselves, but they're not doing what I call resonance. They're not resonating with their prospect. They're not making their prospect go, oh my God, this is what we've been looking for, because they're not speaking to the problem enough.
Yes, makes a lot of sense. And I think also where there is a lot of information available to potential buyers is that the seller may not even get to hear about that potential buyer, because they do so much research online now and via other medium. If you're not finding something that is engaging and understandable, that buyer will come and go through your world or your domain, and you won't even know about it necessarily.
Exactly. Yeah. Because we all do it. Like if we're looking for a local, carpenter or a mechanic, we're going to go online and we're going to look at reviews, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the things we'll look at. So we'll look for social proof in the form of testimonials and reviews. But then what we're also going to look at is what's different about these companies. And if there is nothing, in the absence of differentiation, price is the biggest buying factor. So if you're not communicating why you're different, not only why you're different, why you're better, the prospect, the natural next, part of the buying decision is, okay, well, who's cheapest? If no one's different, who's cheapest?
Yes.
You don't want to get into that game, because that's you'll lose that game all day long, because there will always be someone who's willing to undercut you.
Yes.
The business is a lot harder.
I had a really good example of that just a few months ago, because I've got a photographic studio, video studio, and I wanted to put in a new flooring. And I had 3 quotes. And the first 2 companies that came round, they came in, they measured up, they showed me some options, and they gave me a price, and they said it's the best price that they can do. And they were around about the same. The last guy came in and he said to me, you're probably looking for something that is grey with 18% reflectiveness. I said, yes. I said, how do you know that? He said, because I'm an expert in this area. And he said, I've done photographic studios before. He said, the other thing you need to know is to make sure that this lays flat, you need to put it onto this type of boarding, and it needs to be bonded in this way. If you don't, you're going to find within a very short period of time, you're going to get problems with it. He was the most expensive, but guess which one I went with?
Yeah. Because
he didn't go for price.
He spoke to your problem so deeply. You felt like, wow, this guy gets me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They knew, it proved that they were experts. They knew more than I did about that, and it wasn't just about price. Actually, ultimately, what I saw was that it was going to cost me more to go with the cheaper people, because I was probably going to have to lay a new floor within a few years.
Right. But now, if there's something, in order to position yourself against the competition, one of the ways, there's numerous ways to do this, but one of the ways is to look at what are the flaws in their approach that don't exist in our approach.
Yes.
So if that guy would have said to you, look, yeah, I'm more expensive, but if you go with someone else, you're going to have to replace the floor in the next few years anyway, or, whatever the context was.
Yes.
Now you've just done him a service. He's just done you a service by highlighting the flaw in other approaches.
Yeah.
And it makes the buying decision easier. And that's really the goal of everything that I'm trying to do with clients I work with. I sell my own products and services, have been for, since 2006. I'm always looking for how do we reduce friction in the buying decision?
Yes.
And one of the ways of doing that is by highlighting, and you don't never have to call out names or anything. It's just the overall strategies that are used in your industry that are common, that are flawed, that don't exist in yours. Is a great place to start.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There was a CEO of I'm just trying to think of the name of the company, Atlassian, which is a big software company, and he said the way that we've been successful, and they are a $1 billion organization, is we've removed the friction for the buyer. Almost exactly the same words that you've just used there.
Yeah.
They've made it easy for people to make a decision and choose their product.
And that, to me, it seems so obvious.
Yes.
But again, we come back to when people hear this, it will be obvious to them. But then we bring it back to when you're too close to the problem, it doesn't seem as obvious. So it seems obvious when it's not your product or service.
Yes.
But when it comes back to you and you're in that, you've worked really hard to get the product or service developed. You've put all you put the grunt work in, and then what a lot of people do is their website and their overall sales messaging, whether it's sales calls or whatever it may be, that's almost like the afterthought.
Yes.
They think, well, we need to make the website look nice. Website designers are the bane of my life.
Yes.
Because they're so focused on making things look pretty, and I've got no problem with that. But no one's going to make a buying decision by going, oh, I love that logo, or I love the color scheme of this one. I'm gonna buy this. They're looking for, okay, why should I buy this? What's different? What's the benefits to me? Do they understand my problem? So I love the word friction, and the opposite of that is efficiency.
Yes.
And I know that's what you do when you help your clients. You're very much focused on ensuring that they're efficient in order to get to where they want to be.
Often it starts out is in their website and all of their collateral and their sales messaging. First of all, who is your target audience, and do they understand what you're communicating to them? And actually, a lot of the time, they don't. The company does, because they're thinking about this all the time, and the words that they use. I think sometimes, this may not be just unique to the software industry, is that they like to talk in a very technical way, because they say, well, we are a technical company. We need to show people that we are. But I think what the actual result is that there's a lot of potential buyers, and not just the decision makers, there's also the people who are involved in that decision, because we could be talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds or dollars for a software solution. And there's going to be decision makers and there's going to be evaluators. And if they're looking at it and thinking, I haven't got a clue what this means, they're going to move on next. And there are lots of other options of people to go to. And I think for me, it starts out by saying, first of all, do they understand what you do and why they should buy it? A lot of the time they don't.
Yeah, I agree completely. You don't want a confused brain isn't a buying brain. Yes,
that's been proven, isn't it? A number of times.
If you throw in confusion into a buying decision, then it takes a lot less energy to just go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so again, when you're close to the problem, when you're close to the product or service, you can use loads of terminology that you assume other people will know, but some people in your space will know it. There's different in copywriting and messaging. There's something called states of awareness, and there are in your marketplace, there are going to be people who are at different states of awareness.
Yes.
If you're using the real techie speak, you'll be able to, there'll be a portion of your market who will understand that. There'll be a hell of a lot who don't. And as soon as you start to confuse them, the easiest thing to do is they're going to go somewhere else, which explains stuff in a simple way, but also explains stuff in a way that, just makes it the obvious choice.
And do you know what the justification for that technical language and technical jargon is? They are going to need this stuff. The technical guys do need to know this. But I think the point that they don't see is they don't right at the start of the conversation. They don't at first engagement. They need to have an understanding, first of all, of what does your business actually do? Is this for me? And then what are the benefits? And at a later stage, the technical people come in. There is going to be an exchange of technical information, but it's the right information at the right time, not thrown at them right at the beginning of the conversation. And I do see it as a conversation and a relationship that you build with that potential buyer. I don't know if you see it in a similar sort of way.
So I'm 100%. There's a few things you said there. When you said the right information at the right time, that is one of the most overlooked aspects of any sales process.
Yes.
You don't need to hit people. If you hit people at the wrong time with the right information, they're not going to buy because you're hitting them at the wrong time. So yeah, I totally agree. You need to give people everything they need to make a buying decision. So in the software space, the techie side of things, the technical aspects, that needs to be involved, but it doesn't need to be involved at the start when attention, for example, you need to get someone's attention.
Yes.
To start with.
Yeah.
Techie stuff does not need to be in that space. Then you need to build desire for the solution. It doesn't need to be in at that space. The techie stuff is more, okay, I can see why you're different. I want what you've got, but I need to see if it's suitable or not.
Yes, absolutely.
That's where the technical side of things comes in.
We also look at, and we continue doing research, is looking at software companies, the most successful, and then the others. We're very interested in the software companies that are doing very, very well in today's economy right now. I mean, there are some established players that have been around for a long time, but I'm probably more interested in the fast growth companies to see what is it that they're doing is working in today's business environment. And I think it's about simplicity, the clarity of their communication. And they also think through the eyes of potential customers, and they think about that customer journey. It's interesting actually, because I will often put myself through this journey. I'm probably a bit of a pain to them actually, because I'm not necessarily going to buy from them, where I look and try and plot out what the customer journey is. I saw an example last year, I think it was, where a company, they had a very good means of gaining my attention, which was I'd been onto their website, I'd downloaded a white paper, and this was from software that I thought that we might use within the business that was interesting. And then they sent me a video where they had my name. So they'd done a personalized video. And I thought, that's quite neat. That gets your attention. And then they had a call with them and they said, we'll set you up. We understand what you're looking for. So they listened to me, which I thought was great. Listening instead of trying to sell to me. And then they put me in contact with a salesperson who was pretty good, but then he let everything fall down by saying, I'm now going to send you some information. And he sent me an email with 12 attachments on it, basically saying, all the answers you're ever going to need are in there somewhere. I thought, and then it was just trying to pressurize me for to sign up because it was the end of his quarter. That was his reasoning. And I thought, done a great job, got my attention, listened to me. They created a brief in the nurturing stage, handed it over to the salesman, and he really messed it up. So it's got to be a journey that works right the way through. And I think a lot of the things that you do around the messaging and the positioning, that needs to flow through the company so everybody is aware.
Yeah, and because as you say, the sales call guy, what he's done there is, you've been warmed up, you've got the you can see the value of what they're doing, but he's then sacrificed something which you mentioned earlier on, which I'm really, really big on. He sacrificed relationships.
Yes.
And I'm a big believer, like if I'm working with a client in the expert space, for example, I was speaking about this at a seminar a couple of weeks ago. Funnels are very, very popular, quote unquote funnels,
yes,
online. And a lot of people are pitching it as though this is the answer to your problem.
Yep.
If you've got a funnel, then you're going to be able to get all the leads you want, blah, blah, blah. Well, most people, whoever, now it doesn't matter what niche market you're in, what industry you're in, most people will not make a buying decision straight away.
No.
So you need to have that relationship building process where over, days, weeks, even months, you're continuing building that relationship. Now I do it via a email newsletter, and I don't care what industry you're in, there are ways to do it in an entertaining way where it's not repetitive and you give people value. But I know because of different buyers' timelines that the relationship process of whoever I'm working with is a big, big aspect of making them as efficient as possible. What that sales guy has done is he's violated the laws of natural human relationships, and he's expected you to do all the work. Here's
yes.
the 12 attachments. Go and read through that and get back to me because I'm moving on to my next hot lead. That's not empathy.
No. I liken it to going to a business networking event where everybody's going there for a reason, and you're going to have some people who are going to be wanting to sell their wares, probably most of them. And it would be like meeting somebody who introduces themselves to you, talks to you for 20 minutes without letting you get a word in edgeways, and then finishes up by saying, "What can I sell to you?" That's how it feels. Can you imagine? How would you react to somebody who did that, who just talked at you and then said, now what are you going to buy from me? I need to sell something. It's not a pleasant experience, is it? But I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but when you take that and look at some of these businesses, that is their customer journey almost. It's, here's more information about us. Here's the latest version of our software. When are you going to buy from us?
Yeah. They're focused on what I call immediacy money.
Yes.
They're looking for, okay, how can we make the money as quick as possible? How can we shorten the sales cycle? And therefore they're coming at it, a lot of it from pressure. And it's just not, as you use the word, a pleasant experience. Like, we need to put ourselves in the shoes of our prospects a lot more than most people do. Most people are too busy looking at the bottom line.
Yes.
And then therefore they're letting their salespeople or copywriters, whatever it may be, use hype, pressure. Online, the world is full of sleazy stuff and gimmicks and
oh yes, absolutely,
false scarcity.
Yeah.
We need to, I'm all about long-term, think longer term. So anyone that I work with, if they're only, short-term focused and they're not thinking about their prospects, building these relationships over time, because it's not just about that prospect. If that company had wowed you, you would tell other people about them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, often do. Quite often on this podcast, actually, we come across things that we think, that's great. We'll tell the world. I think most people will tend to do that. You have a great experience, you want to tell people about it.
It's natural because it's that reciprocity factor going on.
Yes.
But if you treat someone badly, if we go and eat in a restaurant that serves us dodgy food,
oh, yes,
we're not going out and recommending them to our friends and family.
No.
So this idea of being, prospect focused and doing what is best for the prospect is where everything that I do come from. I look at the prospect's buying decision a lot more than I do the actual product or service, because I'm looking at it. What do they need to hear? There's a great quote that sums up what you've just said by Maya Angelou, which is, people will forget what you said, but they never forget how you made them feel.
Yes.
And
yes,
if you make people feel a certain way, feel understood, feel excited, feel like you've got their best interests at heart and you're not just trying to pressure and gimmick them into a sale, they'll want to buy from you. Now, that doesn't mean they'll want to buy from you straight away, because people have different buyer timelines. But if you make them feel good and that you're coming at stuff from the right place after you've got their attention, then, you know, naturally the business just becomes a whole lot more easier and fun. I don't think anyone, like, not only the prospect experiencing the hard sell, I don't think the actual salespeople enjoy doing the hard sell either.
No, they don't. They think that's what their job is, though, sometimes.
Yeah. There's a good book I read many, many moons ago called The Go-Giver.
Oh, okay. Do you know who that's by?
Bob Burg, B-U-R-G.
B-U-R-G.
And that's
we'll create a link to that on our podcast site.
Yeah, it's a great book. There's another good book, by the way, if people want to go down this rabbit hole of the idea of giving. It's always been my philosophy. I'll speak about that in a second. But There's another good book called Give and Take by Adam Grant. And it's this idea that success comes from being giving. We've been kind of conditioned to think that, successful people and wealthy people, they've fought their way to the top. They've kicked people off the pile as they're climbing to the top of the mountain.
Yes.
Where I'm all about giving in terms of me and clients. I've been writing a free weekly newsletter since 2006.
Yeah,
where I put
I read it.
Tons of great stuff in there, because my philosophy is based on what's best for the prospect. I'm not always looking at what's best for me. I'm looking at what's best for the prospect. And naturally from that, if you serve people and you're thinking about them rather than just the bottom line, in my experience, in the experience of people I've worked with, it comes back tenfold.
Yeah. So how would you summarize your philosophy in a few words?
In a few words. Well, the overall idea is efficiency.
Yep.
I'm always, in terms of the business itself, I'm looking at how can we make the business the most efficient. A lot of that comes down to the lifetime value of every subscriber or prospect or customer or client that comes in. So I'm looking at it long term. And especially when it comes to, I work with a lot of people in getting paid advertising campaigns up and running.
Okay.
We have to, if the internet, the ad costs now are higher than they ever have been.
Yes.
Trust is lower than it ever has been, and competition is higher than it ever has been. So it's almost like the perfect storm for how not to make paid advertising work, which is why so many people struggle at it. But what I get people to look at is the lifetime value. Yeah. Look at the lifetime. If we increase the lifetime value of every single subscriber who comes in, every single prospect who comes in, every single customer or client, and this is, going way back to Jay Abraham in 2005 or 2006 when I read this.
Yeah, he used to have a phrase about it's I can't remember the phrase about it's leveraging the back end was the idea, wasn't it?
Yeah, he basically said that there are three ways to grow a business. He said, get more clients, which is what most people are focused on. They're focused on get more customers, get more clients.
Which is customer acquisition is expensive.
Yeah, lead generation, traffic, all of that kind of front end stuff.
Yep.
The second way to grow the business is increase the average transaction value.
Yep.
And then the third one, which he said is the most overlooked, is increase the amount of times that someone buys from you. Now, there's a line that he said, I'm going to butcher this a bit, but he said most people, you alluded to it, most people don't realize the cost of acquiring a customer is substantial, while the cost of selling them more or selling them more often or something like that is significantly less.
Yeah.
If we start thinking in terms of longer term relationships and, rather than just this front end lead generation mindset, which so many people have. And in the online space, in terms of a lot of the people I work with who are experts, it's a disaster because they've been conditioned to think that funnels are the answer. Yes. Funnel is number one. It's bringing people in, but most people are not going to buy straight away.
Yep.
So it's just hard to get it right if you follow a lot of the common advice.
Yes, that's something that I see, and I've noticed over the years because I've been in this industry a long time, is that the sort of the common wisdom within the industry tends to go through fashions.
Right.
And because of the internet, the word can spread very, very quickly. I saw that there were trends that used to develop, and it would almost like a wave that would go within the industry where I was having conversations with software entrepreneurs and CEOs, and they were talking to me about their strategy, and all of a sudden it would change, and they would see what they're doing as being unique, but it was the same as all of the others were doing. It used to flow. Sometimes it's because of things that perhaps the analysts have been publishing, but it just goes in fashions. And I think this thing about funnels in marketing has been a big fashion for quite some time now. You know, there's some companies out there, ClickFunnels, for instance, they
Yeah.
created that term, and that sort of it's something a concept that I think people can visualize, and he's done very, very well with it. You know, they can visualize it, they understand it, and because of that, it's become quite dominant.
Yeah, I mean, the funnels idea, the guy behind it, Russell Brunson,
Yes.
the idea, and this is how I teach people that they're thinking about funnels is all wrong. The idea originally came from the old school direct response marketers who used to advertise in newspapers, so mail order and direct mail.
The Reader's Digest type.
Yeah,
They were that classic, weren't they?
exactly. But what their goal was, and it's the same with Nightingale and Conan and the direct mail type, type publishers. Their goal was always to basically make back their money on the direct mail spend or the mail order spend. And then over time, through a relationship, that's where their profit was. Now, what's happened with the funnel guys is they've taught everyone as though funnels is the business. No, a funnel is an acquisition tool and the money is made over time. If you can cover so what I do with my clients, if we can cover your ad spend initially from that small amount of people who will buy straight away,
Yep.
and we build a relationship over time, that's where the profit is over time. And it might be, some people buy after a week, some people buy after 2 weeks. But the word funnel has become more associated with, my funnel is a business. No, it's a strategy. It's just a front end tool. That's number one of what Jay Abraham was talking about. Get more customers and clients.
So you're not against funnels, you're not against lead generation, but what you are for is having much more focus on the customers that you've won and really adding value. So they come back and they buy from you. You don't have to sell to them.
Yeah, and not only that, not just the customers, the prospects who come in but don't buy straight away.
Yes, I get you.
A lot of business owners see the prospects who come in and who don't buy. They see it as almost, they're never going to buy. So they forget about them and they go out in search of more new people.
That is so true and valuable. It's something I must admit I tend to overlook, and sometimes it's our own clients that teach us that lesson. I had a meeting just in the last few weeks, and we've been producing a newsletter since 2000. So we've had this industry newsletter, which is just keeping people updated. We do articles and things. And a company came to us. We were having a conversation with them. And I said, "What do you know about us?" He said, "Oh, I've been reading about you for years, literally years." And I thought, wow, we've been keeping in contact. We didn't know that he's been looking at us. He's been one of, the 20-odd thousand that our newsletter goes out to. We now do it weekly. But he's been watching us. He's been aware of us. And at the right time for him, he's come to us. But he goes back to the early 2000s.
That is you can't get a better example than that. I mean, I've had similar experiences where people have been on my list for 6 months, 9 months. We all have different. This is a big thing that people don't realize or just misunderstand. When there's a small amount of people who will be able to make a buying decision straight away, they're the what I call immediacy buyers, but they're a tiny portion of the market.
Yeah.
For the rest of us, it's not just about we've got a trust has to build, so we've got to trust the person enough, and that takes a little longer to build, trust the person or company. But also other things in life have to line up. So sometimes a business just can't they want to buy the software, but there's staff to be paid. There's not disposable income so you stay in touch with people over time. And the way I think about it is I don't like the term branding, but if you're showing up a lot in their news via a newsletter. So I'm very much a newsletter and via email, because I want people to be, I don't want to build a Facebook following. You can do that. I don't want to be just showing up on their social media. I want to be showing up in their newsfeed on the same days every single week. For me personally, in my in my market,
sure,
so that when they are ready to make the buying decision, they I'm there.
Yeah.
And whether that happens in 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, but it's thinking in that term of relationships and not being so focused on just the front end and then dismissing anyone who didn't buy straight away. There's the amount of money that people miss out on, and not only that, the amount of problems that don't get solved because people dismiss those who don't buy straight away. I mean, it's startling.
Yes, and I think also sometimes the way that they handle what the salesman or the company may see as rejection could also affect the likelihood of that person coming back to them.
Yeah, totally.
And I think sometimes that rejection can it creates, in your words, some friction, which means it's less likely they're going to come back. And who knows what's happening within that person's world, what priorities are at that particular moment. You have to accept that people aren't going to buy always when you want them to.
Yeah, and that you can't, it's not because you didn't use enough persuasion or because you didn't overcome all the objections or you didn't, you weren't a hardcore closer. Like I've listened to some people who will say, if someone says no to you, it's because you didn't hardcore close them enough. It's bullshit. You can't, it might just not be the right time.
Yes.
So you treat them with empathy.
Yes.
And you serve them. Like, is there anything else I can do? Like I'm so big on empathy and treating people like normal human beings rather than, a notch on a chart.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
And therefore you can be lean and efficient if you do that way, versus this whole idea of scale and let's just pour as many people in and hardcore close them. You're sacrificing the long term if you don't treat people the way that they want to be treated. That Maya Angelou quote of people will forget what you said, but never forget the way you made them feel, I think sums it up.
There was another quote, I don't know who it's by, but when you said that, it made me think and I can't remember the exact words, it's who you are, speak so loudly I don't hear what you say. I think it's very much along similar lines. It's, treating people with respect, understanding that they've got other things going on in their life, wanting, as you do, to add value and being authentic as well. And I think that was one of the other things when I was thinking about this podcast, and I was thinking about some people that I wanted to reach out to. I thought of yourself, and the first word that came to mind was, I think that would be a good podcast because he's going to be very authentic and genuine. And I'm going to tell you something. You've just beaten a record because this is the longest podcast that we've ever done. We've done 58 minutes, nearly 59 minutes. And this now after, I think we're into about our 46th podcast. This is the longest one that we've ever done. But it's credit to you because it was interesting. And in fact, I'd like to have a chat with you at some stage about coming back and we can go into some of the details about some of the other things that you're seeing because it was a very interesting podcast. I'm 100% aligned on everything that you said today, which is very unusual. I've usually got something I can have a bit of an argument with, especially when it's with Michael. But but today, no, I mean, great. And I understand this is your first ever podcast.
It is. Yeah, I've got when you reached out, funny enough, I've been thinking about, doing them recently because there's a word that sums up, I was speaking to someone recently, there's a word that sums up why I want to do more of this stuff. And it's the word injustice. I almost get angry that there's so much false information out there. There's so many pretenders.
Yes.
And the reason we get on so well, Mark, is because you've got a big heart. You're very focused on your clients' results and coming from that place of looking after people and empathy. And so as soon as you reached out, I was like, well, there's no one better than taking my podcast virginity than Mark.
Well, since you said something,
I enjoyed every second of it.
No, so do I. We've actually gone to the hour now. Normally we aim for 30 minutes, and we've gone over the hour. And since you finished up by saying some nice things about me, I'm just going to put the invite in out on an email, probably within the next few minutes, because it's been a really great podcast. Is there anything you'd like to say in sort of summing up as a message that you think people need to focus on? If there was one thing within their business that you felt people needed to focus upon, and you see it time and time again, and you had to pick just one, I know there's many others, and we'll hopefully talk about those at another time, what would that be?
The core one is get your positioning and messaging right. Everything, like if you want the most efficient business, everything is going to flow from product in the world, but if it's not communicated right, people aren't buying it. So get your messaging right, which is the communication of your product and service, but also make sure that you don't just look at it from the words point of view. Make sure you look at it from the point of view of how can we help people to understand that we're the best option. Your service, your product, it doesn't exist in a vacuum.
We lost you there, John, just for about 5 seconds. So if you would just go back to the start there, because I don't think it was just at my end. I think we actually lost you in connection. But if you just repeat that, and then we'll either keep playing it as it is, or we'll see if there's a clever way of editing it out. So it's that you were talking about the core proposition, and then we lost you for about 5 seconds.
Okay, so the core thing that people should focus on, if they want the most efficient business as possible, is to focus on the messaging and the positioning. So the messaging is the communication of the value of the product or service, but the positioning is so crucial. And this is the one that so many people miss. Answer the question, why should I pick you over each and every single one of your competitors? The way that you do that, or one of the ways that you do that, is by figuring out the flaws in what the competitors have that you don't have, the flaw in their strategy.
Yeah, we call that competitive space in what we do when we're working with customers. It's about you creating clarity about who you are, what you do, why us, and doing it in a way that makes you stand out from the competition, in a way that is meaningful for the people that you want to buy from you, because that's the other aspect of this. You always got to be looking at it through their eyes. So, I mean, that's brilliant. We'll definitely invite you back, John. I hope you enjoyed today.
Oh,
that's great.
It's always great chatting with you, Mark.
No, and I've really enjoyed it. So that's brilliant. So thank you very much for that. As always, please give us feedback. Tell us what you think. And if there are particular topics that you would like us to cover, then let us know. If there are questions, I'm sure John would be willing to answer any questions that you may have about any of the subjects that you've covered. If you want to find out more about John, go to JON, so it's jonstreet.com. There's his website. I'd say go and have a look at it. It's very well done. It was his copy and the way that he articulated it that first drew me towards him, and I reached out to him, and he's just the same in person. So hopefully some of the conversations today, over an hour and 3 minutes, the longest we've ever done, we've just broken our record. Thank you very much, John, and I hope you all enjoyed it today. Thanks very much.